Hey guys, welcome to My Counselor Live. So excited to be with you guys today. Wow, it has been an awesome week, and we just look forward every single week to being able to interact with you and engage with you in this way. So we are super excited to be here. I'm super thankful to everyone tuning in, whether you are watching us live or watching the replay. And yeah, so I am joined with licensed counselor Josh Spurlock today. If you think of questions along the way over the next hour or so, please comment them. We want to interact with you. We want to answer your questions. We have a licensed Christian therapist here, ready and excited to talk with you guys. So if you think of a question, comment it, inbox us. We're pumped. So Josh, if you want to jump right in, we can go for it.
Let's do it. Hopefully the tech will hold out and we can answer some questions today.
Yes, I'm excited. If there are any technical difficulties, I'll just take it. I'll just start singing and dancing and we'll make it happen. Awesome. Okay, well, let's jump in. This person said, I suffer from decision fatigue, and all of the current decisions regarding COVID precautions, mask wearing, and returning to school are overwhelming. How can I prevent decision fatigue while I need to make all these decisions for my family?
Yeah, totally. It's a real thing. You've got so many decisions that are happening in life, so many important things taking place, so many pending issues that have to be figured out. It can be totally overwhelming. So you're definitely not alone in that. And there are some things that you can do practically to navigate that. That decision fatigue is about a drain of mental and emotional resources. That our brain is an organ like any other organ in our body. It runs on glucose and some other kind of energy type products, for lack of a better word, that fuel our brain in order to function. And those are finite in nature. They're not infinite. So they get used up, they get exhausted. And so the more kind of decisions that we make, the more shifts our brain has to make, the more pressure we feel, the anxiety that we feel, that depletes our resources as well. So what we're wanting to do is kind of limit the decision making and decrease the pressure. And there's a few different strategies that we can use to do that. One, try to eliminate and simplify all the decisions that you can in your life. There are some decisions that you can't defer, that you can't get rid of, that you can't make simpler. But then there's others that you can, right? Little things like, figuring out what it is that you're going to eat. Right? Like you can simplify that by simplifying your meal planning process and your grocery shopping process. And instead of maybe doing what would be your normal routine, try to find out ways that you can go simple with things that require less thought and less preparation. As an example, wardrobe, outfit, kind of decision making. You can simplify that. All the things that don't really matter all that much in life, that you can kind of trim out and simplify the decision-making process for a season, helps to reserve that energy for applying it towards other things. The next thing that you can do is you can segment off the different decisions that you have to make. And so think about like the order in which decisions have to be made, and your drop dead dates, your deadlines of when you have to make a decision by this point in time. And if you have some of those that are like maybe about what we're going to do with school in the fall, right? And we've got 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that, before we have to make a final decision on that. Maybe we intentionally put off kind of making a decision about that until, we're 4 weeks out or we're 2 weeks out. Right? And so we're telling ourselves that we're not going to make a decision about it until then. So taking the pressure off of our shoulders of having to make that decision now at the same time that we're trying to hold all these other decisions and say that one I've tabled until this point in time, and you write it on a calendar so that it's concrete and it's outside of you, and it's like, I'm not going to make a decision until that point in time. Some things need some prep time and need some research and some study done to be prepared to make that decision. So designate time in your schedule for doing that. Block in an hour out or 2 hours out on one day a week. That's earmarked for doing research, praying about, thinking about that particular decision. When you create a container for that, you both make sure that you're giving it the attention that it needs to be able to make a wise decision there, but you're also preventing it from like bleeding over to every minute of every day that's weighing on your mind. Like psychologically, you can put it in a box and say, I've designated time on Friday in a couple-hour block, and if I need more time to come to a conclusion, I designate another block. I designate another block. But you're creating containers that help you organize it in your mind and give your mind permission to not be thinking about that in this moment. And to be able to redirect your thoughts when you find yourself ruminating on those things. To be able to go, you know what, I don't need to be thinking about this right now. It matters, it's important, but I've got a designated time in my life to think about that, and this isn't it. And so I'm going to stop thinking about that, and I'm going to focus on what I'm supposed to be focused on right now. And that's my kids, my work, whatever it is, if it's relaxing, whatever it is, that this is what this time is designated for. I'm going to be fully present and engaged in this. I'll think about that in the time that I've designated for thinking about that. So that is kind of like on think about your computer or your phone and the memory resources that a computer or phone has. That if you've got 11, 15 applications open at once, it just kind of goes, moves so slow because all of the resources are split between all of these different open applications. What that does is that closes a bunch of tabs, closes a bunch of applications so that you only have one open, and you can give all your resources to that one, and then you can close that one and open a new one and give your attention and resources to that. And that's a lot less draining and overwhelming than trying to look at 11 things at once, which is impossible, but really exhausting to try.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Just practical advice. And I think so many of us are struggling with that decision fatigue right now, just that anxiety around none of us have ever experienced some of what's happening in the world today. And so there's so much anxiety that comes along with that. And there's big decisions that are being made, exactly what this person said, I mean, that is about their family, about their kids and their kids' experience. And that can be very daunting. But I love what you said, Josh, just about prioritizing what's important and rest and these things that, need to happen, and not trying to do it all at once or carry it all alone.
Yeah, and I think that rest piece is really important. That thinking about the reality of limited resources, that doing things that are restorative, right? Paying attention to basic self-care type things, your eating, your sleeping, your exercise, your engagement with those who love you, the community piece of it, that those are needs that we have bodily because it's the way God made us. And if we're not caring for those things adequately, then we don't have enough fuel in the tank to be able to give attention to the different things and demands that are on our life right now.
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely see that in my own life, just the way that I'm prone to, be very overwhelmed and thinking of everything all at once, and how critical that rest piece is for me personally. And I think for everyone, I think that rest is a universal need for everybody, especially in this season where there is so much happening and so much distraction and anxiety. We need that.
And the more going on, the more drains there are on those resources, the more important those restorative things are. And sometimes it's really just listening to the body in some ways. That not everybody has the flexibility to do self-care in the same way, but it doesn't make it any less important to kind of figure out how you can work it in and how you can engage it. And so sometimes that's, about engaging exercise. It helps to burn off cortisol and adrenaline kind of in your body, those stress hormones, in order to help you clear that, flush that out of your system. Other times it's about taking a nap. Sometimes we can have this shame kind of voice. It's like, no, I shouldn't need that. I should be able to just power through. And we're ignoring what our body's telling us in terms of its need for rest, which then causes us to be depleted in a way that we don't have the mental or emotional resources to take on the hard things.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you so much, Josh, just for that answer and just the practical
Great
advice.
question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a question that probably a lot of us have, people watching right now, and I myself, that we don't think to ask, but I think it's important to talk about right now, especially. So yeah, awesome. Guys, if you are just now hopping on, welcome to My Counselor Live. I'm here with our licensed counselor, Josh Spurlock. I'm Tori, and we are just so excited to be able to interact with you guys each week, answer your questions, and really just have conversations together and with you. And if you think of questions along the way, feel free to comment them or message them to us privately if you'd like. Completely up to you, but we want to be able to pour into you during this time. So the next question comes from someone. They asked, what is emotional blackmail? How can I stop it if someone is manipulating me in this way?
Yeah, good question. So the emotional blackmail, kind of at its core, is a using against you your love or care or values or character in a way that is manipulative. It's kind of using who you are and very good, praiseworthy, admirable, positive kind of aspects of your personhood as leverage against you in order to manipulate you into doing what it is they want you to do, right? And while its words and verbiage can take on a lot of different forms, one way that it shows up is, if you love me, you will blank, right? And so it's set up this false premise that says, if you really do love or care for me, then you'll do what it is you want me to do. Right? And that's not a true formula, right? That I can love you and really disagree with you. That I can love you and not see things the same way that you do. I can love you and not believe that what you want me to do is what I should do in a given situation, right? And so that you using my love for you as a way of trying to get me to do what it is you want me to do is that kind of blackmail piece. It's that manipulation and leverage of using something that matters to me or something that matters to you as a way of trying to get you to do it. Otherwise, the implication is you don't love me if you don't do what it is I want you to do. Which creates, if you love me, there's pain there, right? Like you're gonna be using my love or using your love for the other against the person, and it's super painful, and it's manipulative. I want to be able to recognize the false premise that is set up in that situation. We don't have to operate under the assumptions that others have, you know, even if they truly believe them. Because not all emotional manipulation is vindictive in nature. Not all of it's intentional in nature. You know, that oftentimes that can be just the product of the culture or family that we grew up in. That we have this sense that love means this, that caring about someone means this, and so that love means never saying no. Well, that's hogwash. You know, that's not true. But many people have grown up in families where that's the case. And if you really love someone, that means you never tell them no. Right? That you say yes to whatever it is they feel like they want or need from you, and you're not being loving if you don't engage that. It's okay for you to step up and go, your understanding of what I should do or shouldn't do doesn't define my experience of life. It doesn't define how I feel. It doesn't define whether or not I care about you or care about the situation. You don't get to define that for me. You can have, you know, those emotional boundaries whereby you don't allow others to define for you how it is that you're going to see those things, or how it is that you define them for yourself, that you don't have to accept those definitions that others maybe would want to impress on you. And so being able to step back, a lot of times being able to process out loud with somebody who's safe and somebody who's healthy, kind of that tension that you're experiencing. Because whenever we all feel really uncomfortable when we're being manipulated emotionally, right? We can't always put our finger on why this really bugs us, but we know if we're listening and are attuned to our own experience, something about this doesn't feel good. I don't like what's happening here. I don't like what's happening between this person and what they're saying. And if we can listen to that, attune to it, wrap words around it, bounce it off another person, it helps clarify it in our mind why that rubs us the wrong way, why that doesn't set with us, and helps us be able to formulate how to have boundaries with that person and with that situation.
Yeah, for sure. And then, just going off of that, we have another question that I feel like we can tie into it a little bit. This person said, my boyfriend always tries to manipulate me by making me doubt what I think and say. My friend told me this is emotional abuse and gaslighting. What are the warning signs of gaslighting, and what should I do?
Yeah, so very much related to this, that gaslighting is this idea of working to try to get someone to distrust their own perception of reality, and that what you're seeing, you're not seeing, what you're hearing, you're not hearing, what you're experiencing in this situation isn't real, in order to cast doubt on a person's own experience, in order to get them to do or not do the things that you want them to do or not do, right? So oftentimes it is about trying to get a person to not have boundaries, not say no to things that are not healthy, things that are abusive, things that are manipulative. And if I can, if you can punch me in the face, I go, hey, that hurt. You punched me in the face. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't punch you in the face. And you ran into my fist. And then, what? I was just standing here. I was just standing here with my arm out, and you ran right into my fist. And then I would never punch you in the face. Why would you even say that about me? Right? There's that emotional blackmail, mission of pacing. Why would you think such a terrible thing about me? If you loved me, why would you kind of characterize me in this terrible way? I would never do that to a person. And so it's like, well, did I run into his fist?
Right. And you
Did I?
mentioned that doubt that it brings in. I also think of shame as something that comes into that too, because then you just all of a sudden get in this place of like, oh my goodness, I
What's
mean,
wrong with me?
I'm a problem. I, thought too quick, spoke too quick, totally spoke out of turn. I think it's like this mix of doubt and shame that come
Mhm.
over us. And a lot of times, force us into this silent place of hurting.
Totally, totally. Because again, it's playing off of the things that are very good inside of us, right? Like we don't want to jump to conclusions and judge people unfairly, right? That's maybe a value that we hold. And so to be told, why would you judge me like that? Why did you do that? Well, I don't want to do that. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm trying to do here. And it's leveraging that virtue within us, that part of our character, to manipulate the situation and try to make us um, not address the situation. Now suddenly the conversation has become about how I'm unfairly accusing somebody, as maybe, my nose is bleeding from being punched in the face. Right? The subject has suddenly gotten shifted away from the problem that I brought to surface, and maybe the confrontation would go, hey, this doesn't feel good. Hey, I don't like the way this went down. Now we've diverted over into these other things, and it's the kind of uh, manipulation that really unhealthy and destructive individuals engage in. But it can be really candy coated. It doesn't come with a big flag that says, hey, this is manipulation. Hey, this is unhealthy. It can come in really benign looking packages.
Right. Well, and especially when you are in love with someone or care deeply about someone, I mean, it's sometimes very difficult to see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes uh, people will believe their own baloney. It's not, and which makes it really difficult to identify the lies kind of within the manipulation, because sometimes people are fully convinced within themselves that a lie is the truth. Right? Like it's very difficult if I'm able to convince myself that you ran into my fist, then it's going to be a really difficult and confusing conversation, right, about what happened here. Because I'm going to be adamant about what happened because it's what I've convinced myself is true. And it makes for a really murky, kind of head spinning kind of dynamic if there's attachment in a relationship, right? Like if you care about me, that we have a attachment connection relationship, then it gets kind of messes with your head.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, I mean, what would your recommendation be as a licensed counselor? What would
Mm-hmm.
you say if this girl was, sitting with you and telling you this struggle that she's having with her boyfriend? What would your recommendation be moving forward?
Yeah, community is a really key protector against this, right? That manipulative people try to isolate you from your community, right? They try to isolate you from people who care about you, because people who care about you are going to see that kind of dynamic, and they don't have the same kind of attachment with the other person in a way that becomes like a confusing lens for them. And so they look at it with a little bit different perspective. They're like, this is nuts. What's going on here? Why are you letting this happen to you? Why is this happening in a situation? They want to come to your defense, and they're angry about what's happening in the situation, because you matter to them and they care about you, and they don't like to see this happen with you. But if you're isolated, then you're not sharing with people what's really happening in your life and in your relationship, so they don't know what's going on. You're not engaged in them. You're not having authentic community with them. And so the safety that can help provide in your life by having others that can look at it and go, hey girl, what's happening here? Why are you letting this take place? Do you see this? Do you see what's taking place here? those conversations don't happen if you're not in community. So the best thing that you can do is be able to engage and allow into your life, your circumstances, the the people who love you and care about you and that are safe and that you trust. And it's very possible and likely that you're isolated from some of these. Is again, you get in a relationship with manipulative people, and they kind of try to position relationship in such a way so that you don't share what's really going on in your relationship with others. It's part of where the power comes from in the dynamic. So it's possible that you have those people in your life, but you haven't been letting them in on your life and what's going on. And so you're kind of stuck, and you're not likely going to be able to get out of it without the support of some good, healthy community around you. So let some people in your life, let them know what's going on. Allow them to be a reality check for you against when things get foggy and your head gets a little turned upside down from the manipulation, to be able to help you cut through that and see through that, and to be able to support you and encourage you so you have the emotional support to say no and have boundaries with that sort of thing.
That's good. Yeah, absolutely. I think I can draw from my own experiences also, you know, and times when there have been issues and people have spoke into my life and spoke into me things that I didn't recognize, truth that I needed to hear and didn't know I needed to hear. So I think that's great advice just from someone who has been in a very similar situation. That is fantastic advice on something to do.
We all have blind spots, you know, every one of us. Right? There's these psychologists that created this thing called the Johari window, which has this really funny and original name from the the psychologists Joseph and Harry, who came up with it. They call it the Johari window. And that, but the word picture is this window with 4 panes in it, right? And one pane, one quadrant in this thing are it's the public sphere, right? It's the things that you know about yourself and everybody around you knows about you too. Right? And so you're aware of these things in you, and those who are in your life and around you know these things also and see these things also. And then there's the private sphere, this quadrant are the things that you know kind of about you, and that but you don't share with those in your world around you. And so you know, but others don't know kind of about you. And then there's the blind spot, where these are things that other people see about you that you're not aware of and of yourself, and that neither that you don't see, you can't see, but those around you who care about you can see these things, right? Your blind spots. And then there's the window of things that you don't realize and others don't realize either. Things that are going on with you that you don't have a grip on, you're not consciously aware of, and others don't understand or see. Only God knows and really understands that the Holy Spirit has to illuminate and bring attention to those things, because they're not coming to light. They're not going to be understood otherwise. And the 2 bars, the cross panes, those windows, they move. And so each square is not equal in size, right? They can move in different size. And when we have a really small public kind of box, that there's a limit to the things that other people see and know that we allow into our life and allow to experience us. We really are limited in the benefits that community can bring into our life. And when we are unwilling to look in the mirror, that we're unwilling to allow others to hold up a mirror to us in our life, then that our blind spots are really big, and we trip over things that others can see what we're tripping over, but we ourselves can't see what it is we're tripping over. And so we just get stuck in the same patterns and cycles because of that, when it didn't have to be that way. That if we engage humbly with community and allow them to hold up the mirror and for us to see what they're seeing, then we could shrink that window and have better insight into ourselves and our situation, which is a huge benefit to us all.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that, Josh. Super good. Yeah, my heart goes out to the person that asked this question, and you're not alone in that. And there are a lot of people who struggle with similar situations, and hopefully, this was able to
Sure.
encourage you and give you some clarity on next steps, moving forward. So I'm going to jump into this next question that we were sent via Messenger. Guys, if you want to message us, feel free. We will be answering your questions for a while longer, so feel free to shoot them our way. So I am going to ask this question. This person said, I have talked to so many friends today who are just struggling with depression over the state of this country. We're all born again Christians, so we know that hope is to come. But many of us, even with opposing views, are just tired of the social unrest, the atmosphere of fear, and the questions over what the world will be like for our children and more. How can we practically encourage one another in this season?
Yeah, yeah, it's a struggle that all of us are facing and in the midst of. Tough stuff happened in our world, and during an age and a season where all of the tough stuff in the world is in our face all the time. That there have been um, civil unrest and, and continuously in one segment of the world or another during every season of life. There's plagues and pandemics that are part of human experience throughout human history in every corner of the world at different times. But there's injustice that's a part of the world since the fall of man and sin entered the world. Like there's throughout human history, there's always been brokenness, living in a sin-wounded and broken world. But we haven't always had the ability for that to be in our face in the every day, all day, the way that it is right now. And there are certainly some very positive aspects to that. Having a more connected society, a more connected world means that things that were overlooked before and were not given the attention that they deserve and need went unnoticed and allowed those injustices to go on unnecessarily, and that people were not aware of them, and so they couldn't be outraged by them, and so they couldn't take action and engage them. So there's some real valuable components to having coordinated communication and access to those things. And there's a downside to that our bodies were not designed to be on hyper alert of those things all the time. Like the alarms going off in our brain and body that alert us to danger, right, are very depleting to our body's resources. Right? That the adrenaline, the cortisol, the norepinephrine, that's a part of the adrenal response that comes with the alarm sounding in our body and sucks down the resources in our body by having us be on high alert. And unfortunately, that when we're hyper alert, we're in that hypervigilance. Part of that is attuning to and focusing in on the potential threat, right? And that's part of how we avoid danger, and move to safety that God's wired into us and wired into our bodies. But media resources have learned how to use that as a way of tuning us into the things that they want us to be tuned into. And so there's a leveraging of that hypervigilance in that system for ratings, kind of from a media standpoint, to get clicks on links, to get eyeballs attuned to crises in the world, because we're wired to focus in on crises. And so that's what we get a constant stream of coming at us. So there's a need to have some understanding about our body and how it's wired and how we're made in a way that enables us to be wise in stewarding what comes into our eyes and our ears and our content. Because if we ingest the alarming content, our body is going to be on alarm. If we are in a chronic condition or chronic state of that, that's going to lead to depression because it depletes our resources within our body to such an extent that we get into a depressed state. And so having some understanding of the mechanics of that can allow us to be intentional about limiting the exposure that we have to these alarming kinds of things. And I'm not talking about sticking your head in the sand. Right? I'm not talking about being avoidant. I'm not talking about pretending like these things don't matter, right? But you can give attention to these things and come to the conclusion about what would the Lord have you to do with that information without it being a continuous stream of that into your mind. Like you can limit like news intake to an hour a day, right? Like you can set aside a block of time, preferably earlier in the day, because later in the day gets you on high alert and interferes with your sleep, and then has you starting the next day with less resources as your sleep's interfered with. But earlier in the day, mid-afternoon, checking in and seeing what do I need to know today, and without having the constant notifications on your phone kind of come up and be in your face, right? That you can snooze people in your Facebook feed, you know, those that are really sucked into just a continuous feed and a kind of reposting and sharing kind of a continuous feed of these alarming pieces. It's okay to snooze them, to clear out your feed a little bit so that you can engage in other aspects of life and engagement rather than continually being fixated on these things that put the body into an alarm state of sorts. You can sit down with the current issues that are on facing society presently, look at how do they influence and impact your world, and what are the things that the Lord would have you do with them. And take a pen and a piece of paper. Pen and paper are really helpful because they're concrete. And move those things out of your head and out of your heart prayerfully into what are the action steps? What would the Lord have me do with these things? And then focus your energy on those concrete things that you can do and take action on rather than just continuous exposure to things that you can't do anything. And that just watching it isn't going to change anything or fix anything or benefit anybody in doing so. And all of that helps steward your energy, guard your mind in a way that helps you be in a healthier place. And you can encourage that in your relationships as well, as you're encouraging one another. Move from spectating to action. We can encourage each other in these things, and we can be intentional in our dialogue and interaction with others to allow the conversation to kind of focus on things in life, in our family, outside of all of the feed, rather than just kind of regurgitating that in our interpersonal interactions with folks.
Yeah, for sure. That is very great. Just practical advice for encouraging one another and just being, mindful and, cautious really with our minds and our hearts right now in the world that we're in. So really appreciate that, Josh, and really appreciate the person that asked this question. So hopefully this was helpful. we are going to jump into this next question. This person said, I constantly have intrusive thoughts that cause overwhelming anxiety. How can I get rid of them to help reduce anxiety?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, anxiety breeds intrusive thoughts, and then intrusive thoughts breed anxiety. And so they become kind of this cycle and loop that feed each other and drive us bonkers. And so it can be a real struggle. There's a variety of different mechanisms that can be at work that can cause that sort of thing to happen. And so how you go about treating that or navigating that really varies depending on what's causing that. And so maybe just kind of I'm going to throw out a few different scenarios that could be a part of the situation that as a professional counselor, I would have more questions that I would ask. I would sit with somebody to kind of understand what's fueling this or leading this kind of for them. But sometimes there's a trauma of sorts that is fueling this, right? So there is a protective feature that the body is doing, that it is, bringing things to our attention in order to alert us to potential danger that's taken place, that's related to an experience that we've had that the brain is trying to protect us from. So an example could be wartime PTSD type scenario, and things in our life that keep triggering remembrances of those traumatic experiences. A lot of times, if there's been relational trauma, like if you've had experienced infidelity in your marriage and relationship, that's so impactful that it can spur those kinds of intrusive thoughts with anything that reminds one of the struggle of that experience. And so that can be related to the intrusive thoughts. Sometimes it's around fear of a loss of relationship or loss of something significant in our life. And so the fear that that bad thing might happen, can result in intrusive thoughts of our brain trying to protect us from that bad thing happening by bringing all of the different warning indicators to us that might happen to our attention.
Right.
Worry.
Think of like that being, designed by God, I mean, not that, God wants us to be fearful and anxious, but just that those warning signs and, there's a gift in the feelings
Totally.
that we have and the fears that come up,
Totally. Yeah. That's an adaptive part of God's design in us. And so when it's hyperactive, it can create some real problems for us that detract from our life. But the mechanism in itself is a really cool thing that God has wired into us and a really important part of our life experience. One other scenario that throughout there is sometimes biologically something is misfiring for us. And that sometimes there's our brain can get stuck in cycles that kind of obsess around certain things and can't shake out of that cycle. And in those scenarios, medication is really helpful in getting the balance in our brain into a healthy place so that our brain doesn't get stuck in those patterns. So those are three different kinds of rumination or intrusive thought experiences that folks can have. Hopefully you can see yourself in one of those, and that will give you maybe a track to go down to figure out, why am I experiencing this and what can I do to help have it be different?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Josh. That's good. That's great insight. And you've just given so much great insight this whole time. And I apologize, everybody, for the technical issues, but Gosh, I'm so glad that you could just hop on and be with us where you are and answer questions and just chat with us for a while. But you guys, next week is another sex therapy Q&A with Josh and Tish. So I am
That'll
super
be fun.
excited to tune into that one because last time it was just so fantastic. There was just so much wisdom that they poured into it. So make sure that you tune in live next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time. You don't want to miss just this sex therapy Q&A. Josh and Tish specialize in sex therapy, Christian sex therapy, and it is just so important. So Josh, if you wouldn't mind maybe just touching a little bit about what people can expect next Wednesday.
Totally. So, the sexual part of our life is a significant aspect of who God has made us, and it's a significant part of our marriage and relationship. And yet, it's an area that oftentimes church and those of us that have grown up in church, have had some real difficulty having conversation and dialogue around. And so, the very normal and common difficulties that people experience sometimes, just there's not a lot of resources or dialogue around how to address them, how to navigate them, how to have them be different. So we're just working together to try to bring God's truth and light into this arena of our life so that the common things that we experience and struggle with, we can get answers to and know how to find healing, wholeness, and really the fullness of life that God wants us to have in this sphere of our life.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I cannot wait to tune in. I will not be doing the interviewing for that episode. Josh,
No, we're going to miss you.
yes, but I will be back the following week. And guys, I'm super excited just to tune in next week and hear all of the wisdom that Josh and Tish have. So make sure and jump in on the conversation. Send us your questions this week. If you think of any, message us. We would love to answer your questions around sex therapy and just a biblical view of sex and the way that God designed it. So it's going to be great. And we hope that you guys have a great week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Whether you're live or watching the replay, we're happy you're here and always here to answer your questions.